This is You Don't Say, conversations about the Black experience in Columbia, then and now. I'm Takia Thomas. Dr. Eryca Neville is very familiar with the education system in Missouri. She's the principal at Frederick Douglass High School, where she helps shape the lives of dozens of teenagers year in and year out. For this edition of You Don't Say, Dr. Neville and KBIA's Reagan Mertz sat down with Tyus Monroe, a senior at Columbia College pursuing a degree in education, to talk about their experiences with education in Missouri and how history plays an important role in the present. Here's Dr. Neville.
So my interaction with school, I'll be honest with you, I really hated school. So being at Normandy at that time and being in an integrated school, one of the things that was not access was not necessarily given to was the gifted ed program. So there was this one social context, because a lot of times African American students don't believe that, smart is us because of the way schools have been formed throughout history. And then I got tested and ended up in the gifted ed program. So while Normandy was 90-some% Black, in the 70s and 80s, their gifted ed and college-bound classes were at a minimum 50%, 50-50 with African Americans and white students. Yeah, it was crazy. So you look at our school system, and coming out of that, they even have a conversation around our valedictorians and salutatorians. They went back and found out that the guidance counselor secretary had been in there changing the GPAs for decades to keep African American students from being valedictorian and salutatorians. So when I look at that history, my entire purpose in education was to create spaces where all students felt welcome, to provide history that showed the accomplishments of all contributors to American society or society in general, and to rethink how we got to the power structures and where they are today, and shifting them. So we try to, I wanted a school that my kids did not hate coming to.
That's a good goal.
It really
Yeah.
is. I wanted something different for kids than I was experiencing. I didn't want them to feel excluded. I did not want them to think that intellect was a bad thing. We needed a place where people could figure out how to sharpen our tools in a manner that allowed people to have some type of peace and respite, and saw education as something positive in as many aspects as possible.
This is You Don't Say, a series of conversations about the Black experience in Columbia. We're listening to a conversation between Columbia educators Dr. Eryca Neville and Tyus Monroe. Dr. Neville is the principal of Frederick Douglass High School. Tyus is a senior at Columbia College pursuing a degree in education. You can hear more from this series online at kbia.org. Now, back to the conversation.
At the core of who we are as educators, we're here to teach our understanding and our space in American society in particular. So we got to unlearn a whole lot of foolishness. 1492.
Christopher Columbus colonized America.
Thank you. We are so used to hearing myths and mythology, and we saw that particularly in this last presidential administration. We've got to preserve history. No, we've got to teach history. So part of that teaching is rethinking and going back to original primary source documents so that we can go and get the intention of the acts that took place from the people that did it. People get offended. Particularly, I'm thinking of the 1619 Project, for instance. That offended a lot of people. Because it was destroying the fabric of America. No, go back and read the documentation that sister used to support it. That was going back to primary source documents on what those that had positions of power in American society put in place intentionally. Not George Washington chopped down a cherry tree.
Yeah, Honest Abe.
An Honest Abe. So we've got to take back the mythology that we have repeated and have a boldness. First of all, we got to reinform ourselves, and I'm still reinforming my thinking. I just finished reading the majority of them. I'm a little behind. Stamped from the beginning with our faculty. A group of us did that reading. This conversation around race and the intentionality of teaching about the inferiority of blackness and black skin started way with the Greeks. It did not start. I got a shirt that says free-ish since 1865. This conversation about making black skin inferior took place with the Greeks looking at the Ethiopians. So this history of how we got to where we are, where that poor baby was sitting in his car with a doggone air freshener 2 days ago, and a police officer pulls a gun and said, "Oh, I thought it was a taser." I'm sure she'd have been a little bit more mindful had that child looked like hers, as opposed to mine. That marginalization, that oppression in the mind, that lack of worth that has been ingrained in so many has been taking place for centuries. So educators have to go back and reteach themselves what really happened. And that is how we inform our future generations on how we're going to change. We got to redo the foundation.
We got to keep learning ourselves. We got to reteach ourselves.
We have to keep learning and fight, because then, those that were in power that do not continue to relearn wanted to take 1619. Oh my God, you can't teach that. Well, if you have not listened to the podcast or read the document, don't talk to me about it. Because you haven't learned to even talk about what you don't like. You're just hearing we're in a Twitter age. You just saw the 144 characters and you said, oh, it's got to be bad. No, go do it for yourself. Compare what you know from history and move on. So we've got to fight that fight while we're also re-educating ourselves. That's why I told you, pace yourself, bite your piece of the elephant, and know when to say no, because it's a lot of work to be done. Find your allies too. You cannot fight this fight by yourself.
You Don't Say is a special project commissioned by the city's bicentennial Como 200 Task Force. It's co-produced by the Sharp Bend Heritage Committee and KDIA. You can hear more conversations online at kdia.org.